Hey there, it's Mike Field, and I want to share with you a segment of the market that we call the double move. And what is that? That's if you have a house here, and maybe it's too small and you need more space, or maybe it's too big and you need less space. Doesn't matter what the scenario is, it's a double move, meaning you're moving from one house to the other. You got to sell this house in order to get to this one, and then you got to buy a house. So what I want to talk about, because a lot of people get anxiety about this. They say, how does this all work? How do you sell one house and then move into the other one? Well, here's what we do. Number one, you always want to get pre-approved before you start talking to getting any idea about doing this, because you need to know where you're going to end up and what your budget is. After you talk to the lender, they'll tell you what you're pre-approved for, and we can decide how much you want to spend within that amount. Now, once we have that number in mind, we can start to look for houses. We've found that it always helps if you pay attention to the market a little bit as you're gearing up to list your home that you currently live in. So that way, when you do list your home and you do start looking, you have a little bit of leg up and you understand how the market is performing and kind of what things are going for. So I'll take a step back. After you get the pre-approval, you want to keep an eye on the market. We'll call that step 2. Step 3 would be getting your house on the market. Now, maybe there's things we got to do to get it ready. Maybe there's things we got to do to make it look good. We'll go through all that before the property goes on the market. Usually about a week before your property hits, we're going to get together, do a final tour, make some final staging edits, and just line it up so that when it goes on the market, everything's ready to go. We'll call that step 3. Property goes on the market, we begin showings. Step 4 would be start aggressively looking for your other home now. And this would mean that, let's assume your house is going to sell in a relatively short amount of time. You're going to have to then get under contract on the other property. Now, with regards to selling your property, there's a few things to keep in mind. You could make your sale contingent upon finding another house. You could go into temporary housing, or you could find some type of bridge loan to be able to help you move forward with that closing on the final destination, we'll call it, if something doesn't happen to where you can't line both things up at once. So again, once we get your house on the market, we get showings, then you start looking, we get under contract. Now, ideally, we will be able to line those closings up simultaneously, assuming that you get under contract on your sale and you find a house in a relatively short amount of time. People always ask me, how do you do 2 closings at once? Well, what happens is we do 2 targeted dates within 2 separate contracts that should line up together. Now, typically it does, and typically there's not a problem doing all this, but it does take a lot of coordination. So that means coordination between the banks, the attorneys, the sellers and buyers that we're working with on the other sides, movers, all this kind of good stuff. So in essence, once we get that closing date established, we work towards that as soon as we get both contracts signed. Now, here's another thing to think about. People always say to me, how do you move from one house to the other? Let's say you're closing on two deals on a Thursday. Well, does that mean I have to be out of my house? Yeah, so that Wednesday night leading up to the Thursday close date, you would have to be completely out of your house, because those buyers for the house you're selling, they're going to want to come in and do a final walkthrough. So they come in, do the final walkthrough, everything should be out of the house, it should be packed up. Ideally, let's say you close your sale at 11 a.m. on that Thursday, you might close the purchase at 3:30. What that allows you to do, get all the bank paperwork, checks cut, everything's lined up, so where you can close your house at 11, be done by noon, head over to the closing table at 3:30, get your new purchase wrapped up. This is kind of a nutshell of how things come together. And if you're interested in talking more about this, because obviously there's a lot more details to go into, or if you're specifically interested in making a move but you got a house to sell, maybe we should have a conversation. This is Mike Field with Field Realty. I welcome you to give me a call at 518-669-1804 so we can give you the home field advantage.